Hi, Ian. How you doing today?
I'm good, Deidre. How are you?
I'm great. Anytime I can get a chance to do a fireside chat with a co-founder of an AI firm that is solving cloud security backlog, I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
Every day, every day.
I
No,
bet it is fun for you every day to talk about this because burnout is one of our biggest challenges. Humans in security is one of our biggest challenges. You and I have known each other for
right.
many, many years, did business together for many years, and we've always found ourselves talking about that. And so when
hmm
I heard you were doing this, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait because it's really plaguing us, this burnout and security backlog.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's really the reason why Jonathan, my co-founder, and I started Gomboc. As you know, I spent the previous 4 years as the chief security officer of Cimpress, and after I finished that role, I took a couple of months to kind of think, what is it that I want to do when I grow up? And it did take me those couple of months to distill basically the answer to the question, which was, what is it in those 4 years that I've seen uh, causing the most friction to my teams, that I was the most frustrated with, that my team members were the most frustrated with. As you brought up, burnout, that's exactly one of those things. It's the problem that keeps playing us in terms of basic misconfigurations in the cloud, and having to deal with that and not having the right tools, not having the right processes to really solve them. Super frustrating, and people get burnt out just from dealing with a huge backlog where they see that they barely have an impact on. Every time they chip off a few alerts from the top of the backlog after they prioritize and all that jazz, they get like 20 more coming in the back end, and then it's like, all right, let's groom it again. It
Yeah.
feels like a super Sisyphean job, and again, I can't blame them for feeling frustrated and burnt out.
Yeah, and these are highly skilled professionals. These aren't entry level professionals that we can just put doing these tasks. And so I just envision, picture that as we're in a shortage and we know that
Exactly.
it takes years to create somebody of that knowledge. What a waste of time for us all. And yet there somebody has to do it, and those jobs are happening to a lot of people that are SMEs, highly skilled of us all, where we're pecking away at stuff. So as it pertains to security backlog, talk more about what we're talking about solving specifically here,
So,
Ian.
so specifically, we're talking about dealing with the basic issues of cloud misconfigurations. Because of the fact that the cloud is growing so fast, I mean, literally exponentially. And as you know, before my last role as the chief security officer at Cimpress, I was with Amazon and with AWS. I know for a fact, I've experienced it personally, the amount of new services that are being added every year, the number of changes that are happening on a daily basis, insurmountable. And now think about the people who have to keep up with that and learn all those new things and apply them. Super frustrating. Again, it's almost impossible to deal with. And because of that, the knowledge gap keeps widening and widening and widening. And obviously the misconfigurations, the fact that you don't know, all 80 parameters of a particular service, one out of 300 services, uh, you're going to be prone to misconfiguring it or creating combinations of services that are misconfigured with one each other. And that's exactly where attackers are going at. It's literally the lowest hanging fruit, super frustrating, and they have the automation to actually look at those misconfigurations and find them. So that's what we're solving. We're not even touching the runtime. We're not touching the application level. These are different classes of problems. We're dealing with the basics. We're dealing with cloud architecture and how do you configure it? How do you configure each and every service in your architecture?
And all I hear is yin and yang, meaning we did great things with cloud by making these types of services and technology available to the masses at a price that was affordable. It fed
Right.
innovation, fed firms like myself. I've been in the cloud
Not
since the
complaining.
beginning, right? Yeah, exactly. And yet, I don't think people thought about how a cloud provider is going to be doing the same things any company's doing every day, updating, improving, fixing,
Mhm.
people leaving, all of those things create issues for us using those services just as much as our own changes do. So we have both sides, and that's where I'm like, oh my God,
Correct.
all this greatness combined with all this and and that is, like you said, that's where the attackers are getting in. And the burnout, when I think of that and I put the story that way, I get that the burnout's the mundane work, and I also get that the burnout is feeling like we're losing,
Right,
right?
right, because you're always behind. Almost
Yeah.
by definition, you're always behind. And again, if only we could come up with an automated way to make sure that you can focus on building the cloud. As you said, you're a business owner, I'm a business owner. I just want to focus on the functionality. I just want to focus on building, satisfying my customers, building the best application I can. I don't want to be inundated by having to follow up with oh, this parameter changed. Oh, in this context, it needs to be that. I want to focus on the big questions, on the higher level problems. If only we've had something automated that would just fix those things in context,
Yeah.
that'll
If
be great. And again, that's literally what we're doing here.
I know, it's wonderful. And I'm so psyched that you have proof of concepts. And to anybody that wants to get involved in a proof of concept, we're going to have a link for you where, Ian and team are ready and happy to provide. Let's talk a
Mhm.
little bit about the solution and the POC, and then
Sure.
we'll wrap it here so that people can get their hands on the product. That's what I want. I think we all know the problem. I think that it needs to be explained in layman's terms a little bit more, which is why I like to do these fireside chats. I didn't come up from the tech side of things. I came up from the sales side of things. And yet I get the problem is significant, of course, being that CyberSN sees the despair of job
Right.
satisfaction at scale. So let's talk about the solution and the POC and move.
Sure, sure. So we've built a product, we built a solution, um, while bearing in mind that we actually satisfy two customers. First and foremost is security. So we've built a product that's very easy for security to come in and in plain English, in a very simple language, define what is that security policy that they want to implement in the cloud. And I'm glad that you actually brought up the fact that you don't want to talk technical. I can actually have a conversation with you as a business owner and ask you, what would you think, again, without you having to know each and every service and its definition of what it does. I could ask you, what would a cloud security policy look like? And you probably say, look, I want to make sure that all the data is correctly encrypted, that it's not accessible to the public without proper authentication, that everything is authorized, and kind of walk through that policy. That's exactly what we do. We enable the customer to define a clear policy. It's typically somewhere around 15 to 20 policy statements. Super easy to create. You can actually use one that already aligned with an existing framework. So it's very easy for you to start off with a policy and say, all right, make sure that that policy now is implemented in my cloud environment. The second part of it is where I get super excited, because the second part really addresses the DevOps people, the people who are tasked with now making changes to the architecture. Because as we all know, security should not be touching production. They don't have the knowledge or the responsibility to run services in production, and that's DevOps's job. And again, DevOps is inundated with building applications and maintaining them and so on and so forth. They don't want to deal with the intricacies of security. DevOps, by the way, don't really see our product. We have built the product in a way that we make sure we're not taking them out of their work environment, which means everything that we do is natively integrated into the DevOps environment, specifically into their Git repos, into their CI/CD pipelines. And it's almost as if we've added a shadow DevSecOps expert to every developer in the organization, making changes, suggesting changes in the code, in the original code for them, basically saying, hey, here's a change I'm making, here's why I'm making it, fully documented. Everything is based on the policy, which means if I, as a DevOps person, have created a service or modifying a particular architecture, I can focus on the functionality, and Gomboc.ai is going to kind of build the security into my architecture without me having to know all about it, and I still get to review it. So that's how we build the product, and we're basically applying those remediations as further left as you can shift. Meaning, we start working at the design level before you even have something in place. And we also work on existing infrastructure. So you can bring your own infrastructure, you can create new one. We will be there to fix it. Integration itself is, as I said, super natural. We hook up into your Git environment, into the repo, so that we can put in those pull requests, those commits to the code, that we can integrate into the CI/CD pipelines. And the second integration point is basically to your cloud environment. The infrastructure as code where we make the changes doesn't necessarily describe your entire environment. And that's why we want to have cloud access as well, just to make sure that we're kind of coupling the two and giving you the most accurate, deterministic remediations for your code. Hopefully that wasn't too technical.
No,
and that's the way it should be, I believe. And in
heard,
terms of a POC, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hold on. The POC. I heard remediation shift left, and that's all you know what I mean? Like that's
key. What you need. Yeah, that's what we do.
Yes. I mean, that is the biggest problem we all have. I mean, I have a software development team, platform, all those things. I know that.
Yep.
And so yes, it doesn't have to be technical. And yet it takes this innovation takes coming from years and years of big scale operations to understand this problem is serious and significant, and it's taking us organizations away from innovation themselves and putting them at great risk, and then the burnout piece. So we're going to have a link to the POC. What do you want to say about the POC so that when they get it?
So POC is fairly simple. We start providing value from the first hour of the integration. Once we're hooked up to your repository where you manage said infrastructure as code, whether it's Terraform, CloudFormation, doesn't really matter. We start working on that, and any policy deviations that you currently have. All right, think about the backlog of alerts that you have from your current cloud security posture management tools. We will apply changes, we'll apply remediations immediately to that. So you can see value from day zero, from hour one. However, we recommend a POC to last 2 weeks. Let's not say at least, but exactly 2 weeks. And the reason is that we want to make sure that you experience not just fixing the existing problems, but also how does it look like when DevOps, where developers are making changes to your architecture? How does it look like when they create a new service? And they can focus, as I said before, on building the architecture, on building the functionality in the application. And we will be there to make changes, to provide those security guardrails straight into their code, zero friction. Basically, again, just like as if you'd had a dedicated DevSecOps engineer with full knowledge of both the architecture of what you're trying to build, of all the security implications, and the full understanding of every service in the cloud. This is where our AI kind of kicks into play. Our engine reads through the documentation of the cloud provider on a nightly basis. So it's better than anyone could have caught up to any new services. We'll make sure that we have the most accurate understanding of how the cloud can be configured, and we'll bake that straight into your code. That's why we insist on having you run with it for 2 weeks, see how developers interact with it, and you can actually get the metrics. You can actually see how we solve problems right there at the code before they even get into production. So that's how our POC looks like. As I said, integration is super easy, and is probably something that you've done before with existing cloud security tools.
Right. Love it. Love it. Can't wait to help you get that in the hands of all of our community. We must make things better for us all. I'd like to say that the time will be used to ride a bike, go for a walk, go to the beach.
Right.
And if we're not doing that,
I told you before, pick up a new hobby.
But at the end of the day, let's make sure we're doing that regardless, because we know our CEOs will find other things for us.
Yes.
But truthfully, we want to be doing other things with our minds. Our bodies being outdoors just needs to happen anyway. So thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for sharing, and I look forward to continuing to watch the success. Have a great rest of your week.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
I can't get the recording, but